Welcome everybody, family, friends, loved ones, community members, and everybody else. Welcome to this emergency convening beyond the pale, the systemic vilification of black men and boys. Hosted by Racial Justice Now. My name is Sankara-Jabar. I'm the co-executive director of Racial Justice Now, along with my beautiful wife, Zakiya Sankara-Jabar, who could not be here today, as we expressed yesterday that she had an unfortunate health emergency that we are dealing with, but we are also very fortunate to be blessed to have a team, to have strong individuals, community members, and others to support us in this dynamic work that must be done. How did we get here today? How did this event come about? Well, it started by learning that Montgomery County, Maryland had a strong spike, an increase in suicides, particularly by black boys and young men. I'm gonna say that again. It had a strong spike in Montgomery County, Maryland. For those that don't know, Montgomery County, Maryland is adjacent or next to Washington, D.C. Montgomery County, Maryland is a very large county, geographically, very large space, and it's one of the wealthiest counties in America. Lots and lots of money. The MCPS, the Montgomery County Public Schools, has over $1 billion budget in the school system. So the great leadership of my wife, Zakiya Sankara-Jabar, finding out that there was a spike, an increase of young black children committing suicide, she began to have meetings with decision makers, elected officials, policymakers, and others, such as, including but not limited to, the School Board of Education, Montgomery County Public Schools Board of Education, the Montgomery County Council, the leader of the Montgomery County Council, or Mr. Mark Ehrlich, a number of private, personal, as well as Zoom meetings to come to find out we would be better off meeting with you. Do you follow that? Put your hands together for yourselves. Put your hands together for yourselves. So there was a little piece of wisdom that Zakiya came across when she came to the conclusion that all of these decision makers, all of these influencers were not particularly concerned about black boys and men. She came to the conclusion by listening to one of our greatest leaders of the 21st century in a short phrase, and this is how little pieces of wisdom can create great change. The saying said, why should we wait for others to do for us that which we can do for ourselves? Are you with me? Yeah. That's powerful, isn't it? Yeah. Just one sentence, though. Just one sentence. Why should we wait for others to do for us what we can do for ourselves? So yesterday we had some powerful presentations because we are on day 2. So again, welcome to day 2 of this event. But yesterday we had a presentation from Professor Tommy J. Curry, Professor of Philosophy, Personal Chair in Africana Philosophy and Black Male Studies, University of Edinburgh. He came all the way from England to be with us. He'll be with us a little later today. We had a dynamic presentation from Dr. William Smith, distinguished professor. I like that one right there. Everybody else is a professor. My brother is a distinguished professor. And John Hutzman, presidential chair at the University of Utah and board member of Racial Justice Now. Dynamic presentation I'm saying these things so you can go back and watch them. We're going to have them available for you. We also had a tremendous presentation from Dr. Evan Auguste, a licensed psychologist and assistant professor of psychology at the University of Massachusetts of Boston. So all of those things, family, based on what happened yesterday, we're transitioning to the second day. And today is about community models that are currently exist and that are already working. Let me say that again. Community models that already exist and already work. Now, we can go ask this person or that person and the other person to fund or to start a program, but today we're going to tap our brothers on the shoulder and say, hey, man, I know you're already doing what you do, and you shining, you doing your thing, you helping us, you serving us, your commitment is to us. So, you know how we do in church, we like to put a little amen on it. We put a little you know what I'm saying? Man, go ahead, brother. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? So that's what today is about. We got some dynamic brothers and sisters that are already doing the work that we just want to highlight. So we're going to start off with our first presenter this morning. It's going to be a call to action. The Amos Wilson Collective, diverse methods of developing black manhood. 4 brothers with 4 unique methodologies share their stories on how they got involved in their communities and the work they do to support the growth and development of black boys and men. One of these brothers, dynamic brothers, Omawale Africa, who is also a Racial Justice Now board member, a Garveyite, a grassroots institution builder with more than 2 decades of student community organizing experience. A part of this collective is also Maurice Scott, a police officer in the city of Philadelphia, and who does a lot of work with the Police Athletic League and others in the community of Philadelphia. I don't want to tear up my brother's name. I believe it's Mujasi. I didn't tear it. I did pretty good. You like that? You see that? Mujasi, that's powerful. But let me get this one right here. Bandalay. Oh, man, that, woo. You feel the strength in that? You feel that? Foundational purposes for liberation, freedom, and strengthening of African Americans. And don't leave out my brother, Rob Doggett. Did I get that right, Doggett? Is the founder of Ijikadi, African Martial Arts, and AfricanMartialArts.com for the liberation and restoration of our African cultural identity. So with no further delay, brothers and sisters, family and friends, put your hands together for our brothers and your brothers, the Amos Wilson Collective. Come on up, brothers.
All right, Hotep. Over calisthenics. All right, Hotep family. All right, can I get a black-tastic round of applause for my brother Hashem? Definitely appreciate the energy you warming up the stage. Also want to send prayers and positive healing energy to my sister Zakiya. No, she can't be here today because she's currently healing and recovering, but if y'all in this room, let her hear some noise. You know, we got to let the people who are doing the work, let them know that we appreciate them and value them for the work that they are doing. So even if they are not here, right, their presence is still felt. I also want to just thank the organizers who are here today that helped with the planning and the facilitation of this event. I felt really good pulling up today and seeing the FOI out in the parking lot. I knew I was in the right spot, so round of applause for the brothers who are on the post. And this is actually my second time in the DMV within 2 weeks, within 7 days. I was here last Saturday. I drove down from Philly to attend Professor Browder's 16th annual fundraiser for the Asa Restoration Project. And I'm here again this weekend, but I'm going to take a page from Professor Browder because before he spoke last week, he said something. He said, I never met a mic that I didn't like, right? And so as a result of that, he decided to write some words down so he could stay on script. So I felt it would be necessary for me to do the same thing because if I go off script, I probably could derail this program and be speaking for a bit too long. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So family, my name is Brother Omawale. I am the founder of the African War College and co-founder of the Amos Wilson Collective. Before I get started today, I'd like to provide a bit of context about these two institutions and the respective missions they were erected to carry out. The African War College was created to equip the hearts, minds, and hands of our people with the necessary knowledge and inspiration to rebuild strong and healthy African families. The creed of the African War College, which is strength through family, is rooted in the Akan proverb that life is war and family is an army. Now, I know that, some folks may hear this that may be a bit up, lean a bit leftward towards the Marxist tradition, and when they hear me mention family today, they may think that family talk is right-wing talk, but I'm here to tell you that through family and through a strong black and redeemed family is our only way of surviving this Holocaust that our people have been placed in and have been going through perpetually. So without the redemption of that family, without the redemption of the black man, the black woman, and the protection of the black child, there's no way for us to survive and to continue to grow strong. So to anyone who has the idea that family talk is right-wing talk, I hope that we collectively can, what's the word I'm looking for, disabuse you of that notion today. So, our focus on the African family is an acknowledgement that without a community of thriving family units that are capable of caring for and reproducing themselves and their culture, no group of people can survive. And I think this is really important. I heard Dr. Curry say yesterday in his opening remarks just the importance of us being honest, calling a spade a spade. And it was one point during his talk where he talked about the conditions in the black family and how we are so hesitant to mention the fact that we are actually broken out of fear that we will be ceding ground to white racist interests who like to look at our condition and point out our condition as somehow, it means that black people racially are just defective. There's something wrong with us. So as a result of that, we tend to do things to try to disarm them of the attacks they often launch against us. We were talking on the ride down. Of course, we're the Amos Wilson Collective, and Dr. Wilson, one of the books that he wrote was a book called Black on Black Crime. But in the decades that since he's written that book, there's been a rise in language or ways of discussing certain issues in our community that has as its chief goal to remove any bullets that our enemies have against us. So if they point out black on black crime as a way to say that we are defective or something is wrong with us, our goal becomes for us to say, well, black on black crime does not exist. It's proximity crime. But the problem that I have with these types of arguments is that we can't heal, what we don't reveal. If we say that something is not an issue in our community, then that means that we're not dedicating any resources to address the issues that we have. So we can't write issues away on paper, that are real in our community. Sometimes we have to take that inventory and analyze what is broken in order that we can marshal our resources to address the things that are broken in our community. So, continuing on, our children represent the lifeblood of the African family unit, but African women and African men are its heart and lungs respectively. So to strengthen our hearts, the African War College has partnered with our sister institution, Sahudi Ma'at, to establish the Amos Wilson Collective, which is a community of spiritual warriors and healers who are committed to building transformative power, starting with ourselves. So to strengthen our lungs, we've developed holistic men's health and character building programs such as Cobra Calisthenics, which takes an approach to fitness that understands renewed strength can only be found in brotherhood where men grow stronger together. Right? And that's important because no matter what we're doing, we can't do it in isolation. We have to do it as a family. We have to do it as a community. If y'all saw that opening snippet, the brother Alborn right there in the front, he's a FOI soldier, and we were happy to partner with the FOI to come out and do our initial training, for Cobra Calisthenics when we launched it in Philly. And hopefully that framework or collective will continue to grow wherever brothers are, because it's important that we come together, that we support one another, that we emphasize our healing and our repair and our re-engineering, because it's necessary that from a holistic perspective that we be healed mentally, physically, spiritually, that we deal with our emotions, our nervous system, that vagus nerve, like all the above. We really got a lot of work to do. So the COBRA framework is a systemic method for group protection and development that has as its primary focus the restoration of black manhood, which we define as a system of order, protection, and direction that is expressed through institutions that are capable of meeting the vital needs of a people. So just reiterating that, like manhood for us, I think it's important that you start with a definition that takes it beyond the individual and places it in the form of institution. And it's critical that the men in our community and the women in our community are working on those vital institutions that allow us to actually manifest and project strength, because without it, again, we won't be able to survive as a collective. And for us, one of those primary institutions is the African family. So joining me today are a few brothers from our collective who I've invited to share their stories on how they got involved in their communities and the work they're currently doing to support the growth and development of black boys and black men. So after they're finished speaking, if you'd like to learn more about our COBRA program or the Amos Wilson Collective, we have a table set up in the back. Just feel free to stop by and check us out. All right?
Thank you, sir. I got it right here. Hotel family. Assalamu alaikum. Baragani. Njama, something. My name is Brother Mujasi, and I'm also a representative of the African War College, and I'm here from Minneapolis, Minnesota, okay? I'm so glad, thank you. I'm a fan and I'm a student of Sister Zakiya and her husband. I'm impressed with the work that they do here. I came across Sister Zakiya on YouTube when she was doing some of her channel work on there and just really educating the people through her channel. But I was impressed with how she advocated for black students, how she elevated black males in the educational system, how she did policy work, and talk about that on her channel, and really educating us across the nation on issues that not only pertain to here in the DMV, but how it replicates and looks similar to what black males and black females, black students are experiencing across the nation. So I was immediately drawn to her in terms of her teachings and how she understands and break these things down on a policy, social, and a family level, and how it applies to our educational structure. So outside of representing the African War College, I'm also one of the co-founders of Black Family Blueprint. My wife and I, Yolanda, who's watching on the stream, we co-founded this organization 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago to this day. And the Black Family Blueprint is an African descendant organization that builds social capital. We do family education program for African descendants and black folks in the Twin Cities. and we also provide coaching. And that's our practice, and that's how we engage. Now, that's kind of like our three-prong approach, but we do a lot more in terms of advocating and supporting black families in the Twin Cities, which we only make up in the Twin Cities, I want to say anywhere between 9 to 12%. And so the few black, when I come here, just like how Dr. Smith said yesterday, when I get around black folks and I feel y'all energy, I get excited because we're kind of in the polar desert up there in Minnesota. You know, as soon as you go 3 blocks out of Minnesota, it's just white. And I'm not talking about the snow. I'm talking about the complexion. And so there's a coherence and an energy that we have to connect with when we get around black folks and be able to do this work. And that's why the work that we do for Black Family Blueprint is so critically important, because we're trying to help black families navigate the whiteness in Minnesota on multiple levels. And so under that project, along with the African War College, I've been running a project called Brotherhood. And Brotherhood I started some years ago, quite a few years ago, and it's for middle school and high school young black boys. And I gotta be brief because I wanna make sure I share the time and the stage with my brothers, but I'm gonna go through just really one of the key essential blueprints that we use. And again, Black Family Blueprint, we employ and research numerous levels of applying research to practice and application. So when Dr. Smith was speaking yesterday, and Dr. Curry was speaking yesterday, and Dr. Geese was speaking yesterday, I'm like, wow, these brothers are laying the research on. And this is some of the foundation that we use to bring the research into real practice and working with families. It's the same thing that I do with black males, our young brothers, in the Brotherhood program, and the other program that I have for black men and black fathers in particular called Black Men in Mind. But I'm only gonna give you just the blueprint and the concept of how we employ research into practice with Brotherhood. So I can go through a litany of how I construct, I wanna make sure I stay away from the microphone, how I construct Brotherhood to work with our brothers in the community, but I'm just gonna be brief. I gotta be brief because brevity is hard for me. I call it vitamin B4, okay? And vitamin B4 is kind of the construction of how I built the programming to engage the brothers. So vitamin B4 is bonding, building, bridging, and breathing. I'm gonna say that again. Bonding, building, bridging, and breathing. Let me break that down briefly, quickly. Bonding is based on the research and the idea that black men have to construct young boys into black men. Okay, that's critically important. We have to build relationship and rapport. This is the teachings of what Mama Marima Ani teaches us, that the product of manhood comes from our culture. Manhood is a culture, is a product of our culture. And in order to build culture, you start culture from the family construction and the culture in the community. But the only way young black males, young boys can experience that culture is if they embrace and have a relationship and a connection with men in their community. Now, one of the things that we challenge in Black Family Blueprint is the idea that one father is responsible for the manhood development of his son. We erode that, because traditionally when we look at the culture that we come from, whether it's Africa or our attempted adaptation into this thing called America, black men constructed and built up black men. So there was always uncles, plural, men, plural, deacons, plural, brothers in the FOI, brothers in the nation, brothers in the Moorish society. It was men who took on young men and put them in academies, put them in schooling, put them in through initiations, and put them through processes to inform their manhood. So it wasn't only relationship, it was the modeling of that process. Young boys being able to interact with men in their community in an intentional way to understand their manhood. So in Brotherhood, I wanted to make sure that when I'm engaging these brothers, it's not just me that they're reflecting what manhood looked like. I had to vet some of my other brothers in the community to make sure I'm sitting down to make sure we had an alignment of what manhood looked like. What does manhood mean to us? What's our value set around that? Because you get 3 brothers at the table talking about manhood, and we're gonna have 3 different perspectives on manhood. So how do we find that common principle and alignment on manhood so that way we can move forward with the platform to engage these brothers? Does that make sense, family? Okay. And so in vetting them brothers, then I construct the program and the engagement and the ways that we meet up, whether it's once, twice a week, creating different events to where there's opportunities for them to build relationship. In order to have an investment in a young brother's life, you have to start with a relationship. You have to build rapport. You have to build connection. Y'all know this already. So I know I'm speaking to the leaders and the choirs, but we have to build relationship in that process, whether in elementary, middle school, or in high school, in order to affect change and build some type of insight into their life, build connection, bonding. Building is basically what we already know. You have to teach our young brothers about who they are. You have to give them the construction of their identity. You have to teach them the history. You have to plant into them what does black manhood look like in America today in the 21st century, in the 20th century? What did it look like in the 19th century? And what are you battling up against? Because like we learned yesterday from the various scholars that was up here, there is deliberate systemic attacks against the construction of their manhood. America is not going to acknowledge, recognize, or even give space to black men in their manhood unless they're co-opted and owned. That's the only way they're going to identify and allow them to have some space of manhood. And even then, it's very submissive and subjective. So when we're building these brothers, we're building the historical and cultural understanding, and we're bringing in Baba Mwalimu Baruti's teachings of what character development looked like in Iwa. So we're establishing character and morality to help them to see that in the process of building your manhood, you have to have an ethical foundation of what you do and how you do it. Okay? And so that's the building process. I hope this microphone's going in and out, so I'm going to try to make sure. And then the next piece is bridging. And the bridging is giving them opportunities. So in brotherhood, we try to make sure that they are involved with service learning activities in their community. Okay? We try to make sure that they identify what's going on, whether it's they want to do something about the drug infestation. Fentanyl is hitting big in Minneapolis and St. Paul right now. A few years ago when we started with this, it was heroin. Heroin had a big uptick in Minneapolis. And the heroin use was as young as 14, 15 years of age. So the young brothers that I had in 2017, 2018, they wanted to make sure they developed voice about that. Some of them had some projects that we did with them around social media and the influence of social media. So when Brother Akil was talking yesterday about the social media influence, I'm like, man, them brothers are on point. Because young black men, when you develop and give them opportunities to affect change in their community, they know what the issue is. And when they have a collection of black men around them, supporting them, guiding them, and bringing the resources and network for them to take it on, you end up bridging experiences for them to be able to define their manhood and how it relates to them affecting change in their community. Am I making sense, family? Okay. Okay, so when you're bridging, you're creating the experiences for them. Naeem Akbar says in order to shift young boys from that male mentality to that boyish mentality, and that boyish mentality to that manhood practice, you have to throw them into the ocean of life and help them and guide them to figure it out. And that's what the bridging is. You're giving them opportunity to swim in the ocean of life and talk about and experience and affect change on relationships, healthy relationships with young sisters in their community. Imagery, you're giving them opportunity to speak to the issues in their community. The last piece is breath. And what I mean by breath, when you go up to a young 14, 15-year-old and say, brother, I want to make sure that you have an understanding of breathing, they ain't going to receive you well. They're going to look at you crazy. Like, brother, what are you talking about? And so when we talk about breath with them, it's a symbolic usage because we teach them of how to connect with their breath. And we do that once a week on Saturdays to make sure they understand what breath means. But the breath is a catalyst to discussing the depth of emotional development. Because one of the things Amawale mentioned and we talked about is that what we tend to oftentimes deny in practice or not give much attention to is the emotional development of our young brothers into their manhood. Because they tend to capitulate to this macho, constructive, analytical, but non-emotional reality of manhood that America tends to bestow on men in general. And white folks ain't even good at the emotional piece, so let alone, we have to attend to that ourselves. And like Dr. Smith was talking about yesterday with the racial battle fatigue and how that affects our body, what we do with the breath is we help them to see how their experience, whether in family, community, at school, or in the various places that they locate, how is that affecting you and your body? How does that affect your emotions? How do we make sure you understand the realm of what emotional pieces you experience? Because we got to make sure that you can get beyond just happy, sad, and angry. You need to understand what complex emotions you're feeling and to not be afraid of them. And so through that breath practices, we're teaching them how to sit within their feelings and allow it to settle. Okay, allow it to experience it. Give them faith and the comfort that you can experience those emotions, and they don't last too long, they're not forever, and it teaches you something. That you don't have to run from what you feel, but what does that inform you of? And so in that breath practices, we use it as a way to help them develop concepts of how to tap into what they're feeling, so that way they can match what they feel with what they're thinking and how to navigate it. And it gives them a tool to be able to move through their life of knowing what their emotional world is, along with their analytical and mental world. And we do a lot around the physical development as well, too. And we try to do that through movement, through martial arts, which my brother's going to talk about in a little bit, through martial arts, through exercise, through activities and athletic piece. But that breath becomes critical as a deeper conversation around their emotional wellness and development. And so that's the vitamin B4 that we incorporate in Brotherhood. And I use part of that as part of the catalyst of what I do with Black Men in Mind, which that's another conversation for another day. But I wanted to just give you a small piece of how Brotherhood and the work that I do with young brothers in the Twin Cities is based on the research and how I had to conceptualize and move it from the research and the scholarship and chew it up and break it down into conceptual frameworks and a blueprint that allows me to implement it in a conceptual way to our program. And so thank you for your time, family. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all.
Working? Oh, Lord. All right, what time is it? No, what time is it? Okay, good morning. I had to make sure I was right on that. First of all, I want to thank these brothers up here, man, to be surrounded by like-minded people, especially when you're in the journey on learning consciousness. You need to be around the right people, right? So I thank you for your influences. I really want to thank, a special thanks to my brother Omawali, who I met not on actually on purpose at the MKA Institute. They were doing a program, and I was on my journey to consciousness, and I met Brother Omawali. They were doing I believe, a closing ceremony, and I saw the work that they were doing, and I was just impressed, and it was kind of lined up, you know, where I was going. I felt like the Creator was leading me into a lot of like kind of speak to what I was already feeling, because we feel a certain type of way in this world being Black, but we don't have the answers to it respectfully and intelligently, right? So I was there, and Omawali kind of helped me through this journey. That's why, you know, I'm still with this brother. You know, I'll ride with him, and anyone that's on his squad, I'll ride with them too. So I'm preferably new. As you know, I'm a police officer. That's what I do, but who I am is a Black man, you know, and I like to look at myself as being in a space that's needed. So I know there's a lot of folks out there, I don't know what your profession is, but being Black is important, and being, most importantly, conscious in those spaces are important. I say that because, you know, it's kind of, it's an irony, right? Like, for me to be a police officer and be as conscious as I am, and I ain't no joke. I'm being honest with you. When I speak about or speak on platforms like this, or we have round tables with the community, I see officers oftentimes, they don't like to be transparent. And transparency is like kryptonite to the police department, as I see it. But I had many people come to me afterwards and say, I've never seen a black officer talk like that. You know what I mean? And then the people that were supposed to be my friends, like Blue Lives Matter, that I don't subscribe to, they kind of walk away from me. And that's fine. You know, you got to cut the grass to reveal the snakes, right? So that's where I'm at. And so, although I'm in this profession, I do seek to try and work with my community as closely as possible while getting paid. So I'm currently in a unit that was formulated because, you know, this word about reform, right? So the Juvenile Assessment Center was formed. It took about 6 years to build. So I wanted to be a part of that because it helped a lot of our black boys in particular kind of make like a holistic approach. The whole thing is just to kind of move them away from their current space, and also during the process, it's not looking like as inhumane. You know, if I could say that, it's kind of hard to say that with the police department. It's not synonymous, but nonetheless, these are people that really are working with our community, and we work closely with the grassroots communities, like organizations like this, and I have a voice where I'm able to connect our young people through that, because we don't want to send them through the justice system, but instead we want to hook them up with, you know, like-minded people and people that look like us, because oftentimes, you know, a lot of these young people are in the schools and all they see is mostly like white women teaching them in the public school system. We already know, like you already know, you know, the statistics and what have you, but my thing is fulfilling my purpose in life. And whatever that is, I'm going to do it, no matter where I'm at. So I found myself in this unit, and I found myself actually being like a forefront person in this unit because they saw the potential that I had, they saw what I came with. And that's only due to me kind of endearing myself to the teachings of like brothers like the late Amos Wilson, John Henry Clark, you know what I mean? And I think it's important. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are connected with groups like, I'm also connected with Afrocentricity International. And of course, you don't see me back here because I'm probably somewhere doing security, you know, in this picture. No, seriously, like Omar Wally knows, I'm always like kind of in the background, you know. I don't speak as much as you probably already can tell, but I'm always around. But I want to kind of like, you know, I guess, you know, speak about, you know, a little bit about, you know, the purpose. And I knew my purpose. I grew up in New York City, in Brooklyn, New York, in Bensonhurst. You guys know Al Sharpton, right? Okay. Al Sharpton, in his like early days, he would march in my neighborhood. I grew up in a predominantly, racist neighborhood, right, with mostly Italians. But my family was big. You know what I mean? We had a big family. If they attacked us, we did what we need to do, right? We got in that station wagon with the wood grain on the side. You know what I'm saying? That's how we were. But Al Sharpton was in our neighborhood a lot because there was a lot of like racial injustices in our neighborhood. Yusuf Hawkins, the young brother that got killed, he went down to go buy a car and they killed him. So I was feeling a lot of like remorse and anger towards them. And then when I moved to Philadelphia, it was a beautiful thing because Philadelphia's like Chocolate City, right? And to see our people, it just was a good feeling to be around our people and go to school. But what I found out that we had violence amongst ourselves. You know, I'm fighting a white man, and then I moved to Philadelphia and I'm happy, but we fight each other, but it's a different type of fight. I used to tell my son, I said, if a white person attacks you, that's because of the color of your skin. If a black person attacks you, it's because of trauma. It's because of crisis. It's because something's wrong with us. You know what I'm saying? It's a different feeling, you know, but while I was a police officer, every chance that I got to work with black people, our people, I did that. But at a certain level, I had to be, you know, intellectually fortified. So I felt like I needed some answers to that. So I went to, you know, joining like organizations like that. I went to lectures to like kind of build my intellect a little bit better, to express myself more, you know, just better instead of like just reacting, you know. So I guess what I'm saying is like the more you have the opportunities to do that, whether it's like looking up on YouTube, looking at a lecture, or just reading a book that's African-centered, just to build your intellect, do so. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people in here like smarter than me, but I'm just talking about my journey. You know what I mean? So, that's pretty much all I have to say for the most part. All I say is just continue to grow in consciousness and just continue to grow as a black family. All right? That's all I have.
All right, good morning, Grand Rising family. Good morning, Grand Rising. I'm Brother Rob with Ijikadi, African Martial Arts, or AfricanMartialArts.com. So I get really excited talking about African martial arts, and I appreciate Brother Mwale for inviting me to speak to you all this morning. So I watched the presentation yesterday, and I was thinking to myself, man, how in the world am I going to follow up on that? Because, they were dropping some fire yesterday, so hopefully you guys were able to attend that and check that out. So I'm not coming to you all this morning as an academic, but I am coming to you as a warrior, as a fighter, as an African martial artist, as an African fighter, as an African warrior. And as such, I understand that in a fight, my opponent may be very friendly, right? He may be a good guy, right? We may touch gloves before the fight. We may bow. He may say some good things about me. But you best believe when that bell rings, what's going to happen? He's trying to knock me out, right? And that's the perspective that I come from when talking about the situation, the crisis facing black men and black boys, right? Our opponent is trying to knock us out. The difference is, right, in combat sports, there's a referee, okay? Your opponent's going to keep beating you up until that referee pulls him off of you. However, in our case, there's no one coming to pull the opponent off of us, right? There's no one coming to stop this, right? And so we, as African people, we as African warriors, we have to learn how to defend ourselves, right? And I'm not talking just physically. So as a fighter and as an African warrior, I understand that my purpose, my objective is to defeat my opponent by any means necessary, right? So what that means is if I have to headbutt you, if I have to hit you in the throat, strike in the eye, kick in the groin, right? We're going to do all the above, right? If I have to use the stick over here, right? Whatever it is, right? That's what it means by any means necessary. But those aren't my words, right? Malcolm X said this back in 1964 when talking about his Organization for Afro-American Unity. That's the spirit of African martial arts. So African martial arts is focused not just on kicking and punching, which is great. We like to kick punch. That's all very good. However, when it comes to warriorship, we're talking about economic warfare. We're talking about spiritual warfare. We're talking about mental warfare, right? We cover all four battlegrounds, okay? So the title of our presentation today, I know it was read earlier, but the goal is call to action, okay? And I want you all to remember that, call to action. So there's 4 things I want you to remember from my presentation this morning. First thing, by any means necessary. Can everybody say by any means necessary? By any means necessary. Let's do it again. By any means necessary. By any means necessary. One more time. By any means necessary. All right, so in terms of mental warfare, one of the things I did about a year ago was I started teaching African-centered martial arts, right? So as a martial artist, I've been doing martial arts all my life, and this is all well and good. I have a martial arts school down in my area. I live in Chesapeake, Virginia. But the problem is I'm teaching everybody that comes through the door, whatever, as long as they can pay, I'm teaching them, right? And that's all well and good, but what am I doing for my community, right? And many of us in this room, many of you have skills, talents, and abilities, right? And I know you wouldn't be here if you weren't using those already for your community. But I do want to encourage us to continue to do so, right? But also look for anything that we can do that we can pass on to our community. So one of the things I did, I started teaching African-centered martial arts at a local boxing gym in my area, just on a volunteer basis, teaching the kids, okay? But guess what? Again, the kids aren't just learning how to kick and punch. They're learning about their history. They're learning about their culture. They're learning about where they come from. We do affirmations to tell them who they are and to be proud of who they are. They learn Swahili, okay? So it is all-encompassing in terms of helping the kids, right, young boys and girls, primarily boys, but it's helping them to understand who they are and understand their identity, because we have an identity crisis in Black America. We don't know who we are. We have no idea who we are, right, because that was taken from us, right, our language, our culture, our history, right, everything, right? It's like we have amnesia, okay? So my purpose is to use martial arts as a vehicle to transmit culture. And so my challenge to you, right, we said by any means necessary, point number 2, please take this home with you, is to duplicate yourself, right? A lot of us in this room are doing great work, okay? We're doing great work, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But how many folks have a job, right? How many folks have a job? Good. We all have jobs, right, for the most part, right? So what happens if you quit your job today? Does your company go out of business? Absolutely not, right? But that happens to a lot of us in a lot of our movements, right? When the founder or the leader of that movement was either taken out, assassinated, or otherwise, died of natural causes, what happened to that movement? It oftentimes declined, right? And so part of what my thought process is, I'm not just thinking about my lifetime. I'm not just thinking about today or tomorrow. I'm thinking about 500 years from now. Where are we going to be as a people? 400 years from now, 600 years, whatever time frame you want. But we have to think long term, right? We have to think, how am I going to duplicate myself so that when I'm no longer here in my lifetime, whatever it is I built will still be here, okay? That's all that matters. That's great that we can do things in our lifetime, but if we want to succeed, we have to think beyond our individual lifetimes, right? And so that's the purpose of what we're doing in terms of African martial arts. So remember that. Duplicate yourself, right? Make sure you are replaceable in the work that you're doing, okay? So that means that we have to be teachers, right? We have to bring up the youth, okay? So that's point number 3, okay? We have to bring up the youth, which means that we each one teach one. We may have heard that before. When it comes to African-centered education, I believe there's going to be a speaker talking later about African-centered education. Everything we do has to be African-centered, okay? And so moving on to kind of spiritual warfare, I'm a Christian, okay? That's what I do. I'm a Christian, right? However, I understand the trauma that historically Christianity has brought upon people of African descent. That's the fact. It's the fact of the matter, okay? And so for me, making everything that I do African-centered, starting with my spiritual practice. It has to be African-centered. It has to be, right? The people of Israel, right, the Hebrews, they centered their spirituality around them, their culture, their people, right? So when I talk about Christianity, I don't use the term Jesus. I don't use that term because that wasn't his name, right? Jesus is actually a Greek name, translation of his original name of Yeshua, right? The reason I bring this up, because this is important, the words we use are important. We say that we're not Eurocentric. We say that we're not, our spiritual system is just neutral. However, we're using terms that are absolutely from Europe. So we have to consider these things in terms of warfare, and it starts with our spirit. So I hope I don't offend anybody with that. You guys can, I bought some boxing gloves. You guys can punch me out front later if you want, If you haven't, how many been hit in the face before? It's a great experience, okay? Awesome. Look at that. I got some hands raised, okay? All right, fantastic. You guys can, we can do that later. All right. So that's spiritual warfare, right? Spiritual warfare, making everything we do African-centered, right? Making sure we duplicate ourselves, making sure we're replaceable, and thinking beyond our own individual lifetimes by any means necessary. Last point here for me is economic warfare. So I will speak to you as an academic because I do have an MBA, but in terms of economic warfare, our primary goal in terms of as an African person is land ownership, okay? Land ownership. So it's not, yes, having black-owned businesses, all these things are important. Being successful financially is important. But the ultimate goal is to own land. Own land, we grow our own food, right? That is the goal, self-determination, right? Where we don't have to rely on others to at least provide basic necessities for ourselves, okay? Because when you want to conquer people, the first thing you do is you take their land, right? That's the first thing you do. You take their land and then everything else follows, right? Their bodies, their minds, and so forth. And so for me, as an African person, land ownership and growing my own food is critical. Number 2, it is important to buy black, but it's not just important to buy black, but we also have to sell black, right? That means we have to have our own businesses and these kind of things. They're all things that we know about already, okay? So I won't belabor that point, but I will give you some advice here for those that are not sure how to get started or not sure what to do, all right? I'll tell you, I learned more on YouTube and on just listening to podcasts than I have in my entire, MBA program and college career, okay? If you want to go work for somebody else, absolutely, get your MBA, get your college education, all that thing. I don't dissuade that. Get that anyway. That's great, okay? But if you want to, work for yourself, then you're going to have to self-educate, right? That's just what it is. And then finally, just employment, right? Any means necessary means I'm going to do any means necessary. I'm going to own land. I'm going to have a business. If I need to work for someone else, I'm going to work for someone else. Any means necessary. Because when it comes to fighting, I'm going to use every inch my opponent gives me, right? I don't need a lot to knock them out, okay? I just need a split second, right? And a lot of us are going for that knockout punch. We're trying to look for something big. We're trying to create these big programs, which is great if you have the opportunity and ability to do that, okay? But for most of us, individuals, right, no matter how old you are, I'm looking at a lot of young people in the audience, okay? Just start with a small thing. That's all you need. Make everything you do African-centered. Tell your friends, okay? Research, study, right? Build unity, okay? It's just the small things. Use the skills that you have, okay, that God's given you. Use the skills that you have and just start there, okay? You don't need a lot to knock out your opponent. Those are my final thoughts. Please, again, if you want to support what we do, I'm at AfricanMartialArts.com. Again, I'm Brother Rob, and I appreciate everyone's attention this morning. I think we're going to open up for questions. We got a few minutes maybe for questions, so if there's questions, please let us know. Yeah, let's go start over here.
This is just awesome. It's really overwhelming. You all are just awesome. As a mother of 5 boys, 5 young men, 2 went home, and 2 are still here with me. I wish that I had had this knowledge 60 years ago, but I'm getting it now. I have 11 grandsons. 11 great-grandsons, and 6 grandsons. Okay, so my interest is self, for real. I live in Baltimore. Right now, our city is getting a really, really bad name, a really negative connotation. And some of us are trying to fight that image by having rallies at Fox News and different places where we can show some of the programs like Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle. We want to bring those programs out. We want to bring We Are Us. We want to show what you all are doing that's already being done in our community to negate that negative image that's being portrayed. How do we get our communities and our police more connected so that when they stop a young black man, it's not automatically reaching for their gun. It's not automatically that when my mom walks out of her door, she lives right in the inner city. When she walks out of her door, because she has so many young black men, she doesn't fear. But there are other black women in our community who fear going out if they see a black young man walking down the block that they live in. How do we get more organizations, more people? The young lady was here the other day, said they don't have men to join their organization. How do we get more brothers to become We Are Us, to become leaders of a beautiful? Where do we start with these young kids? I'm listening to all this, and I want to be able to go back and duplicate what I'm hearing, and make sure that the ones of you all who are already doing, we don't need to keep starting over, keep organizing new programs. No, that's not what I'm about. It's about making sure that we connect all of you all together so that when one walks, all walk.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Miss Gwen, you said it was Gwen, right? All right. No, I definitely appreciate the question. I guess right off the bat, in terms of getting the community to be more unified with the police, I would say that my perspective, and I think it's shared here, is that it's oil and water. I don't think that the two will necessarily mix, just given the function of policing here in America. But what I will say is that the Amos Wilson Collective, we have certain values that we seek to embody that allow us to grow stronger and actually build family. One of the things that I think that we suffer from as a community is like just this perpetual fragmentation, almost like a cancer. We're always breaking down and splitting along lines of whatever the classification is. There's a way for us to split and differentiate and separate, and that doesn't allow us to build power. So our mission as the Amos Wilson Collective, right? So we are a community that's committed to establishing transformational power. And we always emphasize that transformation starts with us as the individual. So you have to embody certain principles, right? So historically within the movement, there's been this principle of operational unity that we've tried to employ, but we've decided to take that a step further and work towards something referred to as transformational unity. And that just means the ability to work across differences and keep the big picture in mind. It's really meeting our people where they are, because everybody has something that we can work with. I think Brother Rob alluded to the fact that a lot of times our approach is to like boil the ocean instead of just trying to boil a pot of water or try to like rub two sticks together to start a fire, like really starting where we are. So there's just certain principles, right? We talked about this on the ride down, and warfare, right? We say you take whatever your enemy gives you, but you don't accept everything that's offered, right? There's a difference. And in taking what your enemy gives you, you look for openings. So it's the same thing in looking to build. Like, is there an opening with this brother or sister that will allow me to build with them? And you use that as your insertion point to kind of like come together and grow stronger. So ultimately, like we're trying to embody certain values and principles that will foster our ability to grow stronger and achieve our goal. And our primary goal, again, is a strong and healthy African familial unit, and that requires a strong African man and a strong African woman working together in a way that is harmonious to achieve our collective goal. So,
Thank you for that answer, and thank you for that question. We have 6 minutes left in this session. I see one hand, I see two hands, I see three hands. What I'm going to ask from you is that you ask a specific question directly, and that you answer the question specifically directly for the sake of time, because I promised that we don't do CP time. We're going to stay on schedule, okay? Y'all with me? All right, I'm trying to be of service today. Coming your way.
Really quick question. For those of you who have been able to, how do you get buy-in from your school system? I made the case yesterday that the school system has the greatest level of access to black bodies in any other system. So how do you get buy-in?
It is, okay, yeah. I don't work with the school system, but I've been invited to. And one of the ways that we had to do is we had to look for specific allies, black folks within that structure to do presentations with. So some of the directors and some of the programmers in different departments, particularly in the departments that work on family connection, family liaisons and stuff, and present to them models that we have to work with. And that's on a district level. I tend to work better with the specific school and building some alliance and a connection with schools. So certain principals oftentimes are looking for community connections to be able to bring programmers in for their after-school program, or to work with the counselors, if the counselors are open to it. Now, the Minneapolis Public Schools, St. Paul Public Schools, they tend to be a little bit more inviting, that at the same time they're deeply rooted within the structure of whiteness and how they operate in their pedagogy. But we just so happen to have a really good, powerful Black Educators Coalition and piece in there that creates invites and invitations and red carpets for community organizations such as myself to get access to the young people. So again, it's really connecting with those programs and the directors of departments, and then looking at maybe specific schools, local schools, and building connections with the principals, counselors, or even teachers. And I would say even look at the after-school programs that's connected to those schools as well, too.
Thank you for that answer. Excellent. Saw a hand here. Going this way.
Good morning. As a man mom, the one thing I struggled with when my son was younger was allowing my husband to groom him into a man, but also trying to allow him to enjoy his childhood. I think that masculinity within American society is you got to be a man, you got to act like a man and take it like a man, and he's 5. You know, you need to allow him to be 5. How do you guys address that? Because that's the one thing that me as a mother struggled with. It's not like it was anything that, you know, was a rift between me and my husband, but it was always a conversation where he's 5, he's 10. You got to allow him to have a childhood while you're, you know, trying to teach him to do things and to be a better man.
Thank you for that question.
That's difficult. That is a challenge, because most of my day throughout the week I'm coaching Black fathers, and I see that come up in some of the conflict between mothers and fathers who are working together, whether they're married or co-parenting, is the idea of manhood development in that child, and how there's differences between a mother and a father and how they perceive manhood. So first we have to start with a conversation of agreement. We have to get to an agreeing principle and definition of what it means to develop this boy into a man. Oftentimes, the father has an idea of what he wants as a man, and he may come from a family and a structure where there is a very clear definition of what manhood look like. But how that gets developed and cultivated in that child as we're raising them, how it aligns, and whether or not it's complete or not becomes the question. And so this is where we have to support the father to align manhood in his community and to other brothers, that whether he has uncles or brothers or other men in his life that he can bounce his manhood definition off of. You still, as a mother, have some information and some feedback in the construction of that manhood, but there's also the piece of like, how do I make sure I'm supporting his process in that manhood as well too? I have to rely on his father and my husband to be able to develop his manhood. But then there's the piece that I mentioned earlier. We have to also look at what's missing in our definition of manhood, and that's a conversation for you and him to have. Like, I want to cultivate his emotional development. I want to make sure that this is stage appropriate to his growth. If he's just an early middle child, if he's 5 or 6, you know, we can't expect him to do things that we expect out of him when he's in middle school or high school or even a young adult. So is it age appropriate? And that's the conversation and discourse we have to make sure we facilitate between mothers and fathers.
Great answer, great answer. Man, put your hands together for the Amos Wilson Collective. Tremendous, tremendous. Thank you, brothers, man. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you, brother. Thank you. That was excellent. Man, one of the greatest things I'm learning as we go through this process, one of the greatest things that we can do as human beings is work together.